What's good? Welcome to the What's Good Podcast. I'm your host, Milton Young, and welcome to a solo episode. Today, I'm excited to get back on this mic. It's been a while for me, and it's been a big week. It's been a real big week for me. A lot of new things. Well, it's not even new things. It's things that I've been doing I haven't done in a long time, and I'm really excited to get back on the mat. I started training jiu-jitsu again. I got back on the stage. I'm doing open mics again, which is fun. With the comedy now, I've gone for 2 weeks now, and both weeks, the first week, stepping on that stage, looking out there, seeing the audience. Actually, I didn't see anybody. I do the comedy at a place called Dead Crow in Wilmington, North Carolina, and it was different for me. The stage was different. Whenever you're doing comedy, any venue that you do, it's going to be different. It's going to be new. It's going to be a little uncomfortable. But, I had a lot of fun. And the thing is when you're going back and trying to get back into your routine and you're trying to fall back in love with things that you really enjoy doing, but for whatever reason you stop doing them, it takes effort, You really have to push yourself. But when I got back up on that stage and I ran through my routine, first of all, it was a great audience. I love the energy. We had some decent comics going up on the mic. But for me, I had a good set. I had a decent set. I wouldn't say good. I had a decent set. And, I'm always working on something. When I was training jiu-jitsu in New York at Matt Secor's, he always told us to make sure that, you're working on something. You're always working to get better, right? You don't just show up to roll. You don't just show up to compete. You show up to work on something. And for me, what I was working on is being consistent, right? And going through what you call the follow through. And it's basically follow through with what you say. If you're a believer of the law of attraction, if you're a believer of speaking things into existence, both things I believe in very strongly, then you realize that you have to do your part. In order for the universe to meet you halfway, you have to step up and do your part, right? And my part is showing up. And I was really happy that I had a bunch of excuses to not show up to either jiu-jitsu or to comedy, and I made it happen for both of them, and I'm really happy about that. So for the comedy, when I was back on that stage, I was looking out there trying to really get a feel for it, just really take in the moment, get a feel for what it was like being on stage, get a feel for what it's like going through my material, get a feel for, the laughs, man. As a comedian, what you really, really work for every week, and when you're on that stage and you're looking out in that audience, and you spent the week being an alchemist, taking your jokes and taking them from that uncomfortable reality that they are and turning them to something that the audience, people that don't know you but can relate to you, or people that can't even relate to you, can really enjoy. Man, there's an art to that, right? And my goal when I go up there is to master that art. And I'm a long way from doing it, but I'm having a lot of fun. I'm enjoying the journey. And, if I can tell anybody anything, it's the journey is the best part. It's not the destination, is the best part. And, my destination, what I want to do, my goal is to eventually have a show and I'm the headliner, right? I'm not talking about a show where, I'm traveling or touring or anything like that, but I want to have a showcase and I have, 3 or 4 comics that are with me that I enjoy, doing comedy with, that I respect their craft, that I respect, their skill set, and, do a show and have fun doing it, man. Being a headliner would be awesome. So that's my goal, but I have a lot of work to do before I get there. The podcast is going to be a good way for me to kind of not even practice comedy so much, but have these conversations with some of these the talent that's around here. They call this a mini Hollywood, I guess, for a lot of different reasons. The artists that show up here, the comedians that show up here, the actors that show up here. So I want to submerge myself in that, have some of those people as my guests on the show, learn as much as I can. But that's my goal, is to headline at some point. And I know I'll get there. You look around and you see the talent in the room, and you just realize, this is where I should be. This is what I should be doing. You enjoy it. but the hard work is being consistent. And that's, I think, something everybody struggles with. It's something that we can all get better at. There's two things: consistency and persistence. And persistence is different than being consistent, because persistence is being consistent in the face of resistance, right? And a lot of people don't understand that, in order for you to be successful in anything, if you don't have that drive, if you don't have that persistency, then forget about it. For me, it's funny because I've seen a lot of people that started out with me. We're doing the same thing as far as jiu-jitsu, comedy. And we both started out as white belts in jiu-jitsu or comedy, right? And one person stuck to it and the other didn't. And one person got a black belt and the other one didn't, and it's always the person that stopped, Even with comedy, I started doing, I took a class with Jim Keller. There were about 8 of us in the class. Awesome class. Out of that 8, I think 7 of us made it to the stage. Out of that 7 that made it to the stage, 3 of us are still doing comedy to some degree, and only 1 of us have made it to a point. No, I'd say 2, because my boy Casey's still doing his thing in Saratoga at Comedy Works. So shout out to Casey. But yeah, one of us went on and made it to Shafi. He went on and he made it to the fact that he's touring now, I could say. I mean, he has a full-blown tour. If you go to his social media, his Instagram or his Facebook, I mean, the guy is literally touring. He's in the Comedy Cellar, just crushing it. So shout out to Shafi as well. I'm really proud to see what he's done. And, when I met him, I knew that there was something different about him, because anything that he did, he was just very consistent with. He just showed up. He was always writing, always working, always looking for a way to get better. And it paid off, man. The guy is crushing it. You go to his Instagram, it blew up. You go to his Facebook, and you look at his page and you see all the different spots that he's headlining. You see all the places where he's doing comedy. One thing that was really special about him is I remember, he would do comedy anywhere. I mean, if there was a coffee shop with 5 chairs and a stage, Shafi would be there doing comedy, right? And when he moved to Connecticut, I remember, I don't know anyone that's, famous from Connecticut that's related to comedy, but Shafi, when he went there, he went ham. I mean, anywhere that he could find a venue, he made it happen, just so he can get stage time, just so he can get in front of an audience, feel the audience, and just work through his material, man. Work through his material. And it takes a lot to do that. It takes a lot to show up for yourself and be that consistent, but it pays off. And, I'm that's what I plan on doing with comedy. I stopped for a while because life just got busy. At least that's what I tell myself. I mean, it did, but life's busy now, and you just the difference is I'm finding a way to make these things fit in because they're just that important to me. And jiu-jitsu is the same way. I started training jiu-jitsu again last week. Last week was a big week. Started a lot of things that I plan on continuing moving forward, but jiu-jitsu was really important to me. I was having a rough week. There was a lot of things going on, a lot of new things I was trying to schedule those, get them into the schedule. And I realized that, if I keep on pushing these things off, they're never going to happen. So I decided to do the stand-up. It's my second week going, and then I started jiu-jitsu, my first class, and I got my ass handed to me, in a good way, in the sense that, so I went to Johnny Shields in Leland, Johnny Shields in Leland, and he was awesome, man. I mean, when I walked in, got up off the mat, came over, greeted me, and didn't even charge me. And, shout out to Johnny for that. And they were doing no-gi. It was a small class, but small classes are great because you get that individual attention that you need. When you're in a bigger class, you kind of blend in and you don't stand out as much. So you don't really, if you make a mistake, no one catches it. You can be practicing the routine wrong, the technique wrong. And if you don't have someone that's going to come over and kind of address that, then you continue to practice it wrong. And then that's where you start to develop bad habits. So I was happy and lucky at the same time. Happy that I got such a warm welcome. lucky in the sense that it was a small class. So I was able to interact with the instructor. I got a really good vibe from the school. The athletes that I were training with were savages, man. I mean, these guys were wrestlers naturally. They've been doing wrestling. They've been wrestling for a long time. Technically, they're white belts, but when you wrestle at a certain level, even with your judo, they don't necessarily call you a white belt because you have a lot of the basics down as far as base, as far as balance, your endurance, like just little things that you learn when you're doing jiu-jitsu, but you kind of solidify those techniques when you're wrestling and while you're doing judo. They're different martial arts, but the concepts are very similar. So you're not starting from scratch. When you're a wrestler, when you're a judo player, you know how to throw people, you know how to, move your weight around, you know how to control someone's body, head control, wrist control. All of those things are a huge aspect of jiu-jitsu. So when you're learning judo and wrestling, those are all the basics really that you go through. So I wouldn't call them straight up white belts, so to speak, but they technically had only been training for 5 or 6 months, but it felt like they've been training for 2 years. It felt like they were training for 2 years, just really, really athletic. They really knew what they were doing in the sense of controlling my body, controlling their position. I mean, their gas tanks were just unbelievable. I mean, so I'm used to training. When I was training full time and I was going, 3 or 4 times a week, I worked my way up to 10-minute rounds, right? 10-minute rounds. I mean, that's grueling. When you're grappling with someone, it's a different type of endurance. I feel like it's the best type of endurance someone could ever have because you're using muscles that you never knew you had. You're constantly going against someone restraining, right? You have that constant resistance from someone pushing back, you pushing, pulling, all those things. So you really get it's a gruesome workout, and building up. You start out with 1 minute really, and then you build yourself up to 2 minutes and then 3. That's the standard. Some people just roll for 3 minutes, especially if it's a big class and they're trying to get a lot of reps in. They'll have you roll for 3 minutes, and then the bell rings and then you move on to your next opponent. And then the next increment is typically 5 minutes, and then some people go to 8 and then all the way up to 10. 10 minutes is a long time, It doesn't matter how you put it. But 5 minutes is also a very long time, and that's the rounds that we were going in. So I haven't trained in over I could easily say consistently training. I have not done that in over 2 years. So for me to get on a mat with these savages, I mean absolute savages, and last for 5 minutes, I did 3 rounds. They were good rounds, man. I felt great. 15 minutes, but it felt like, oh my God, it felt like 2 hours. When you start to get tired, it's one of the worst things ever when you start to get tired and there's somebody, a 200 plus pound person on top of you trying to strangle you or break you, your wrist, your arm, your leg, your whatever they can get a hold of, man. It's a stressful 5 minutes, But the good thing about that school is I suffered an injury where I tore my pec. So I don't have the confidence that I used to with that side of my body, and it's the dominant side of mine. And I told those guys, and there's a lot of schools out there. If you come in, you're a pretty big guy, they're gonna attack your injury, especially if you're just walking through. If you're just if they think for any reason that they're never gonna train with you again, then you look like a target almost, look at this big piece of meat here. I'm gonna tear this thing apart, and they will. They'll attack your arm, they'll attack your injury, or they just roll super hard with you for no reason because they're trying to prove something that doesn't need to be proved. And one thing that I can say about training at Johnny Shields is that he kept an eye on everything that was going on. I never got into a situation where I felt they were trying to hurt me. And I felt that, they do want me to come back and train. I think it's a great group of people. I like the environment for what I saw. But there was a lot of control there. No one was rolling with an ego. And I'm not going to start training or commit to the first school that I go to. I'm going to kind of enjoy that process of finding my home. But, I do want to go and see if there's other schools out there that kind of match the type of jiu-jitsu that we did when I was in New York training at Matt Secor's. We're not flashy. We're not flashy at all in the sense that we're going to go out there and do the flashiest move and get the oohs and the ahs. That's not it at all. We're really traditional in the sense that we just focus on the basics and master it. Connection, balance, leverage. Those are the things that we focus on. And it's really hard for someone that's fancy to go up against that if you really are doing those things right. If you're connecting the way that you should be, if you're using the right leverage, and if you have a strong base, it doesn't matter what you're trying to do, it's really hard to go through. So that's what I'm looking for. I think Shields is a great place to train. I look forward to training there again in the future. I'm actually going to be going back there this week. I got to figure out what days I'm going to be training. But yeah, I'm excited about that. It was fun. I got a great workout. What I liked about it the most is the feeling of accomplishment when you're done training, especially when you're an older gentleman training against these younger savages and you survive it. There's nothing like it, But there is something that I have to deal with, and I have to figure it out myself is, I'm very competitive. I love to compete. I love to push myself. And I'm getting to the age where, you can't really do that, like the way that you did 10, 15, 20 years ago. My body doesn't recover the same way. And, an injury hangs around a little bit longer than you want it to. So I really have to figure out how many days I'm going to be training. I know that I have to train. I just have to figure out how many days I'm going to be able to dedicate to that and really stay to it. You just feel better. You look better. I got some weight I'm trying to lose. Jiu-jitsu will definitely help me with that. I think that's what I'm looking forward to the most, really, the transformation. Changing of the diet, changing of the discipline, changing of the sleeping. I mean, when you're training, man, you have to live differently. You have to be disciplined, else it comes out on the mat. Same thing with the stage. When I'm on the mic and I didn't write that week, I didn't practice my jokes that week, I don't really know what direction I'm taking things. It shows. It shows on the stage. The audience feels it. You feel it. It's uncomfortable for everybody. But so that's it. It's really about showing up, working on something. Like I said, working on that consistency. I have to find a way to make sure that I get back in the studio to do my podcast, get on the mats to do my jiu-jitsu, and get on the stage to do my comedy. And I think those things, the variety of them, I think they're going to keep me very busy and they're going to keep me very happy. Work's great, that's everyone's got work. That's what you do, but who are you, right? And I think through going through and training, writing, doing these interviews, that's what I love, man. Those are passions, and it took me a lifetime really to find those things, right? I mean, I've always enjoyed talking to people, I've always enjoyed making people laugh. I've always, been terrified of getting my ass beat. So those things now, they all kind of came together, and they own their own little section in my life. And I want to grow in each and every one of those areas. I feel I like to put everything in like a belt category. In jiu-jitsu, there's white belt, there's blue belt, there's purple belt. Then you have your brown and you have your black, right? And typically, it takes about, like I said, 10 years to get your black belt, typically. There's a lot of people out there that get it a lot sooner that are damn good black belts. I know one. I know a few of them, actually, and they're all really good. But I'm just saying the typical person, right? With me, I'm right now in jiu-jitsu, I have a blue belt. And when I was rolling, I didn't feel like that. I felt like a white belt that was on his second day. I felt like I didn't know anything. And I know a lot. It's just, there's something about muscle memory. And when you're on the mat every day, that muscle mind connection, you're just solidifying that path that's in your mind and in your body and through your muscles and everything. And when you're training on that consistent basis, it's like a reflex. It's a reflex. And you got to get those reflexes sharper, and the only way to do it is to go up against, good competition, practice what you're learning over and over again until you don't even think about it. You just react. And I love it. And it goes the same way with comedy as well. There's people that they go 3 open mics in 1 week. You know, Shafi was like that. Shafi, if there were 3 open mics, he was at every single one. He was there before anybody else got there. He was writing when he was waiting, and while he was in between his set, he was going through his jokes, and when he was done, he was writing, and then he left, you know? So it's that type of commitment that makes you different from everybody else and kind of puts you in a category of your own. And that's where I want to be. I want to be in a category of my own. My inspiration for a lot of this stuff, and I've said it many times, but I'll never not give credit to Joe Rogan. I mean, he really set my interest in podcasting. I saw what he was doing with his interviews with his friends, and it was entertaining, man. And they would talk about the craziest stuff, and sometimes it was just stupid things, but he made it entertaining. And now look at the guy. I mean, and he does the same things. He's got his black belt in jiu-jitsu. He does comedy. Definitely does headlining. He's been doing that for God knows however long, and he's got an incredible podcast with phenomenal guests. I don't think that man has to do. I don't even think what he does he considers work when it comes to the podcast. I mean, the only part of that's probably work for him is just showing up on a regular basis, being consistent with his energy level, and being consistent with the type of show that he puts on. You know. He doesn't sit there with a list of questions. He's gotten beat up so much about his interviewing style, the type of guests that he has, how controversial he is, but he's been doing it for so long, and he's got such a loyal followership. Man, so many followers follow him, and they just got his back no matter what. And I'm one of them. Well, I wouldn't say I got his back for no matter what. There's a line there, but you know, I think he's a good guy. I've been watching him for a long time, so I have a good idea where his moral compass is. There's a lot of fighters out there that love him. You know, there's a lot of people out there that hate him, but that's how you know you're doing something right. When you got people that love you and you got haters, man. Haters, we love you, man. We love you. Even you guys play your role in this process. So we love our haters, man. But yeah, and if you don't have haters, man, you're probably not doing it right, you know? You got to have haters. Not everyone's going to love you. And I realize that even with comedy, man, when you're on that stage and, you know, there's some people in the audience, I've seen it, everybody else in that show is having a great time. Except for these 2 people, they're just pissed off about something that has nothing to do with you, but they're at your show, they're not laughing, and they're not hating on you necessarily, but they're just not feeling what you're saying, you know? And there's those people, man. And you just got to learn how to deal with them. And the more you do things like push yourself out of your comfort zone and really go after things that make you feel good, things that you enjoy, things that, you know, inspire you, it's there's nothing like it, man. There's absolutely nothing like it. If someone's going to hate you for doing that, the way you do it, and let them hate. Let them hate. But you just keep on doing you. A long time ago, someone asked me, you know, how did you find your passions? You know, how did you find out that you were so passionate about jiu-jitsu? How did you find out that you were so passionate about podcasting? How did you find out that you were so passionate about comedy? And all of those passions, how did I find them? I went looking for them because I was bored. I was really, really bored with what was going on in my life. With jiu-jitsu, I remember I was working with a crew, and there was one person in there, man. He was always talking about jiu-jitsu. And Chad, his name was Chad, and he was always talking about jiu-jitsu. And, you know, we made a deal that, you know, if he showed up to work on time, I think it was for a whole month straight, that I'd go and do a class. I never thought he would do it, and he did. So I kept my word, and I showed up for a class. And after my first class, I fell in love with it, you know. But I was looking for something because I was working out. I was enjoying working out, but you know, it was getting bored. I've been working out ever since I was in high school, you know, different workouts, you know, all these different trends come in. You try, you like them, you don't like them, you stick with them for a while, you don't. But I was getting really bored, and I was about 230 pounds, big. I was really big. And I went in there, and this kid, Chad, no, well, what I can't say. Why am I saying Chad? Pat Chard. Shout out to Pat Chard. Pat went in there, and I think he was like 100 and maybe 50 pounds, and he was just playing with me, man. And I remember I was telling you guys, you know, Sometimes in the beginning you start at 1 minute, and then the rolls can go to 3 minutes. I mean, after 30 seconds, I was done. I couldn't do anything, and I realized being that big, my muscles, that's just oxygen that you're using, that to power those muscles, man, that takes oxygen. And they got heavy. All that pushing I was doing, they were just filling up with blood, and they just got super heavy. I couldn't do anything, and he was just playing with me. And two things happened. I fell in love with jiu-jitsu that night. And I don't think I stopped. I think the next day I showed up. I just kept on going. Almost for a year straight, I was training because I just fell in love with that. With stand up, I went to an open mic. I don't think I went on stage. I wasn't stupid enough to go on stage. A lot of people show up to open mics. They haven't written anything. They don't have a premise. They just go up and it's their first time, and they think the audience is gonna love them. I think that's stupid, because you're setting yourself up for failure. If you go up your first time and you totally bomb and you just feel terrible because you weren't prepared, then you're not giving yourself a fair opportunity to try something that could really change your life. So I didn't go up on stage like that. I refused to. I didn't do my first open mic until I started taking the class with Jim Keller. And when I started training it was training. That's what it was. It was comedy training, but he taught us everything from, as far as reading a room, which is huge. You have to be able to read a room to tell what joke you should be telling from what joke you shouldn't be telling. And that could be even an accent, because if you're saying certain words with an accent, or there's certain sayings that might work in different cultures, but just don't translate over. Like, I just fucked the pooch. First time I heard someone say that, I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. And it threw me. If you say that in the wrong audience, then like I said, that's just going to throw them, because who says that? But it's true. Or bum versus ass. Like, some people don't know what a bum is. They think a bum is someone that's on the street, they don't realize that could be referring to a part of your body. So you say that and you use the wrong word in front of the wrong audience, they completely miss the tag. They completely miss the humor, and you're up on stage with a funny joke that's not funny just because you didn't read the room properly. Even mic control. I remember mic control 101. Some people don't even know how to go up there and take a mic off of the mic stand. And it's pretty simple, but it's pretty complicated. And if you do it and it's easy, then it's simple. And if you go up there and you mess it up and there's an audience watching you and they're laughing at you, and when you don't want them to laugh, it can get ugly fast. I've seen it. It's almost happened to me, taking the mic off the stand. You don't have it wrapped properly. You start wrapping it around the stand, then it gets wrapped around you, and just people are laughing. It's not part of your act. It's really scary. But it happens, and that's the reps that you're talking about, being comfortable enough so something like that doesn't happen, and being comfortable enough so that if it does happen, you can play out of it. I was able to play out of it. It turned out, being pretty funny. It's not something I want to work into my act, but it's something, if I get in trouble like that again, I know what to do, how to get out of it, So enough about that. I'm looking forward to this season. This is a big season for me in the sense that we're in the studio now. We're in this nice, beautiful studio. We're going to be having some guests live here in the studio. I miss doing live interviews. The reason being is because of the energy exchange. It's something completely different about being on a Zoom call and talking to someone versus being in the same room with them and being able to read their body language, being able to see what questions are kind of making them really react, and how you let's dig there a little bit, and just having that energy exchange, man. I think one thing that we all really enjoyed about Joe Rogan's podcast is, if you've watched it, or any podcast, when there's an interview going on, it's just the energy exchange, right? I don't think anybody, for the most part, is going to Joe Rogan's podcast to get an education on anything, because if you are, good luck there, But it's the entertainment part of it. I've learned a lot from his podcast, don't get me wrong. I've had to do a lot of fact checking after the fact, but I've learned a lot. And I hope that people watching my show or listening to my show are going to walk away with the same thing, that they learned something from every one of my shows. If you listen to a show, you walk away, you haven't learned anything that you can kind of tuck away in your pocket and walk with and carry with you, through your everyday life, then I'm not really doing a good job. That's the way I feel. I like to go back and listen to some of my podcasts and kind of find the lesson in each one. And sometimes I listen to the same podcast and I find different lessons each time. But they're there. You just have to dig, And that's the purpose of these things, those little gems that you can take and kind of carry with you off into the rest of your rest of your life with the people that you meet and the things that you're looking for, If I didn't have podcasting and if I didn't have jiu-jitsu, if I didn't have comedy, I'd be really bored. I'd be really, bitter to a certain degree. And life just wouldn't be the same, man. There's nothing really to look forward to, nothing to really get you fired up, So I'm happy that I found those things. And I hope in listening to what I've done, my journey, the guests that I have on, their journey, and just watching me grow through comedy, watching me grow on the mats, and watching me grow on stage, you'll see, and you'll become influenced enough to, even if you're in your 40s or your 50s or even your 60s, to go out there and try it. There was a 60-year-old that did an open mic last week, and killed it, absolutely killed it. And there's a lot of people that think to get into comedy you have to be young, but I don't necessarily agree with that, because sometimes when you're young, you don't know yourself as well as you do. Not sometimes, all the time. When you're young versus getting older, you don't know yourself as well. And in comedy, it's all about really knowing yourself and being able to bring that out and show it to other people. Comedy, it's just a great thing, man. It's helped me out in so many ways. It's helped me deal with things. If you can poke fun at something, man, that hurt you or made you cry, then you're winning, because there's a lot of things out there that if you don't change them, your view or your perspective on them, or if you don't find the lesson in it, then they can tear you apart, man. They can really, really tear you down. You don't want that. You don't want that, man. You want to be able to be that alchemist and go in a bad situation and find a good opportunity to walk away with something good from it. The absolute best thing for me in life is being able to look at some of the most painful situations that I've gone through in my life, right? Being poor, being one of the only black kids in an all-white school, or being a minority in general, divorce, just racism, all of those things, man, they can really tear a person apart unless you learn how to be an alchemist and flip those things upside down and take a lesson out of there that you can share with other people, or create a perspective that you can share with other people, or just make a jokes that you can laugh about and kind of diffuse the situation. That's one thing that I've always been able to use comedy for, is to diffuse situations. Just get people to stop and look at what's really going on right now. Like, what are we really doing right now, right? And that's really changed. It's transformed my life. It's created opportunities that if I wasn't able to do that I might not be here, right? I might be a little bit more jaded towards life. I might be a little bit more upset, bitter, depressed, all those things. But if you can just transform the situation that you're in, man, it's a really powerful tool. And I've used it more times than I like to admit. But every time that I've used it, it's been a game changer. It's not saying saved my life, but except for when I was getting beat by my mom and I was able to make her laugh. Yeah, I think that saved my life. Yeah, I'm almost 100% positive that saved my life. But we'll get into that another time. But even that, I'm serious, man. I remember one time, I got my report card back from school, and I thought making all the kids laugh in school was great. I thought it was the best thing. I was getting all this attention in school that I wasn't getting from home, and being the class comedian was something that I enjoyed. And the dumber I was, the funnier it was. I mean, the funnier, the harder the kids laughed, the more pissed off the substitute teacher or the regular teacher got, which made the students laugh even harder. And I remember getting 3s, 5s, 10s on I'm talking like, you get 90%, 80%. I'm talking 5%, 3% on my test that I would get. And I remember one day my mom, the teacher called my mom and was telling her that I was being more of a distraction in his class and I was actually being a student. And my mom, I knew she was going to whoop my ass when she got home. I knew I was in for it. So I raced home off the bus. I remember running home as fast as I could. I opened up my bottom drawer and I just started putting on pants, man. I put on 2 pairs of pajamas. Then I put on the sweatpants, real thin ones, right? And then I put my jeans on. I put another jeans. So I had like 5 pairs, like solid. I mean, I was good. I had some nice cushioning for that belt, right? So my mom came home. She grabbed that belt, boy, and she went to work. And I thought I was doing a good job, man. Every time she hit me, I would scream. And then I don't know, I got into it a little bit too much, and I was screaming even when she wasn't hitting me. And she kind of put 2 and 2 together. And she started laughing because she realized like I had all of these layers on, right? And she just thought that was funny. And she after it was all said and done, she's like, yeah, next time I'll make you strip those layers off. Start whooping your ass. So she knew, and she let me know that she knew. It was just funny, but those type of things, man, like they build character, and that's why I love comedy, man. Like, saved my life. And it builds character, and I still use it to this day to diffuse situations. And just, I like making people laugh, man. I've always liked making people laugh, and I'm pretty good at it, but I want to get really good at it. And the only way to do that is just to train, man. It's a training, right? It's a skill. If it's a skill, you can get better at it. I can't tell you how many comedians I used to work with in terms of, when I say work with them, we'd show up to the same open mics and I would just watch them go through their transformation. They went from being terrible. I mean, when I say terrible, I mean, they went up on stage and got no laughs. I mean, their material was just, I wouldn't even call it material. It was just substance abuse, I guess, because it wasn't good enough to say it was material because there was no premise to it. There was no joke. They were just talking and hoping that the audience would save them with the laugh. And I watched them transform that to, one laugh, go up the whole 5 minutes. And Comedy Works, shout out to Comedy Works, because that's really where I what do they say? What do they say about it? Well, what do they call it again? Not breaking the seal. That's something different. What do they call it? Breaking my teeth or something? I don't know. But Comedy Works is where I got my first opportunity to go on stage and do an open mic. That's where I met other comedians that were doing open mics. And that's where I met, like, I don't want to call it a family because it's not. Comedy Works is definitely not a family, but it's almost like a tribe, I could say. And, that tribe showed me a lot of love. And I watched those comedians grow. And like I said, Comedy Works, they give you 5 minutes. So for you to be up on stage for 5 minutes and only get one laugh, man, that's brutal. But I watched it. And I watched multiple comedians like that. They go up the first time, no laughs, go up a couple more times, no laughs, then they finally get one laugh. And that one laugh is enough to bring them back the next week, and that one laugh turns to 2, and before you know it, it's 3. And then before you know it, it's not even about the laughs anymore. It's the person actually found their voice. So they know who they are on stage. They know what they're looking for. They know their purpose. They know why they're there. They have a style that they believe in, and their jokes are kind of catered to that style. And before you know it, they're going up there a solid 5 minutes, and they're just getting laughter after laughter after laughter. And then it gets to a point where you actually want to see that person. Like, you look forward to him or her coming up on stage because you want to see their act. Sometimes you even know their jokes because they work on the same joke over and over and over and over again. But every time they're working on it, man, it's getting a little better. With the joke, the placement of 2 words can change it. Just the order of those words, where you place those words, your intonation, your body language, all of those things can change the color, of a joke, the flavor of the joke. And all those things, I'm telling you, the audience connects with. They're so sensitive when they're in that audience and they're looking at you and they're judging you and they're reading everything you're doing. You know, half the time it's just like this. You're on stage, you have these bright lights beaming down on you. All of it's focused on you. The rest of the room is dark. So everything you do is being illuminated on this in front of these people. And you have a mic that's amplifying your voice. So everything you do, someone is being exposed to it, right? And you have to be reactive to that, man. You can't just completely disregard that. You have to be very in tune with it, because if you aren't, well, guess what? The audience picks up on it. And if they pick up on it, man, you're done. If they're picking up on things, like I've gone up on stage before, man, and people have been talking in the audience, man. And that throws you off, man, because look, this is my stage. Pay attention to what I've got going on and don't distract me with your distractions, because I'm going to lose my place. I'm going to lose, focus, which you don't want. And I'm probably going to attack you for doing that. So don't do that. You know, I had a guy come in once, two of them. I mean, Saratoga, August track season, Saratoga Springs in New York during track season. You have an incredible audience, but you also have a lot of drunks, incredible drunks. I mean, these people are professional drunks. I mean, they are on a whole different level. And one guy came in and he had a big day at the track, won a couple thousand, bought a bunch of drinks for himself. And he was just going to town. And every comedian that went up, I remember that list, it was about 26 comedians that night. And this guy, man, every comedian he went up there, he was heckling. And it got to the point where the comedians before they went up were struggling, because they were like, it was throwing off their act, because they knew that this person was going to be harassing them. And a lot of these people, it was their first time going up on stage. Like I said, if they knew what they were doing, then they were working on something. But it wasn't crowd work necessarily with a drunk guy. A lot of people don't show up to an open mic prepared to handle a heckler. They usually show up prepared to handle other comedians, which sometimes can be hecklers. But no, I'm kidding. It's funny, they say that these open mics, a lot of comedians go after each other and they don't really give each other support. But I'll tell you what, from what I've seen, yeah, I mean, other comedians, especially if there's judges there and someone's, has an opportunity and there's a scout in the audience or something, then comedians, they get weird. I'm not going to lie. It is a competition, right? The people that are at that open mic, they're all kind of competing for the same opportunities, not necessarily the same spot, but it's the same opportunities. And sometimes things can get weird. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes people hold back laughs when they should be giving them to you. And that sucks, and sometimes you go to a show and there's 36 comedians and there's 4 people in the audience. So, and the comedians are working on their jokes. If there's enough room in that light, if there's light in that room, then they're probably working on their jokes for a set they have coming up, a show they have coming up. So it's different, man. It's different for everybody. But what you have to do when you go in there is go in there with the premise, go in there with your plan, go in there with your jokes, even if it's your first time. Don't write it down the day of on a napkin. Go in there with a plan, man. Go in there and spend 3 days writing your jokes. When it comes to you being called up on stage, you're going to be ready to smash. And if you do bad, then just come back the next week and just keep going and going until you get that laugh and that joke. Check that off and go on to your next. And you go as long as you can until you have, 5 or 6 solid jokes. And then you got yourself 5 minutes of material. I remember when I first started and I was in Jim's class, I didn't even have 30 seconds of material. But in just continuing to go, before you know it, I went from 30 seconds, 1 joke, to 2 jokes, 3, and before you know it, I have a whole arsenal of jokes. But here's the thing, and that's why you have to continue doing it. Here's the thing, a lot of those jokes are not relevant to me anymore, right? So like the divorce, I love those jokes because they were so real. That's some of the realest stuff I've ever written. When I went and I did the graduation show, it was one of the best things for me because I had spent, 2 months really battling these jokes to get them to where I felt they were good enough to share with an audience. And they were really reflected my pain. And they really reflected the situation that I was dealing with. And to share that with an audience, you know, to share that with an audience and to get them to laugh about it. There's nothing like that. There's no feeling like that. And then it was the best therapy I could have had. You know, the class cost me, I could be a little bit high on the price, but I think it was about $250. One of my friends at the time, my best friend, paid for it for me, which is great. Shout out to Anthony. And he was the one that paid for the class for me. We both went, and it was absolutely phenomenal. And it was the best thing that I could have done, you know, and I think it was therapy at the time. I know it was therapy at the time. Just every week showing up for that Wednesday. It was a 2-hour class, and I was just working on everything that I was dealing with that divorce, man. All the pain, all the confusion, all the crying, everything, man. It just all came out on the stage in front of 300 people, and it was the best release I ever had. And I felt after that I had dealt with that chapter until I had to go to court. And I was like, we'll get into that another time. But yeah, it was beautiful, man. And it, like I said, it was like an alchemist. I took that opportunity to go in there and take a situation that was really breaking me down and really, you know, forcing me to question a lot of things that were going on in my life at the time, only to realize that, it wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was, that all things pass, and that, you know, at your lowest, the best thing that can happen to you is that you hit rock bottom, so that anything else that happens is an opportunity for you to elevate yourself, right? When you hit rock bottom, you know, there's no way that you can get any lower. There's actually some goodness to that, you know, and doing comedy, taking that class, being in front of those audiences, going through my routine, it was able to transform how I was looking at things, and it empowered me in ways I didn't think was even possible. You know, there's a lot of men out there that go through divorce, a lot of women that go through divorce that don't survive it. And that's just the truth. You know, it's a devastating thing. And then not a lot of people survive. And I was, not only was I able to survive it, but I was able to persevere in the sense that I created a nice little act out of it. I met an absolutely incredible person that changed my life at the time. And I just didn't allow it to hold me down, you know. And she saw the act and she loved it. And, you know, something like I said, like something like that had such a grip on me that I was able to kind of wrestle it out of that grip. And I was able to grapple with that and turn it into something positive. I'm very proud of that. You know, I'm very proud of that. So we're at this week. This is technically the second show that a second episode. This week's going to be a busy week for me. I'm planning on going on stage again, Dead Crow. And you're going to hear me talk about that place a lot. You're going to hear me talk about other places too, because I really want to get out there and really get some reps in. I want to get on stages. I met Sinbad. Sinbad was one of the best comedians I thought Sinbad was one of the funniest comedians in the world when I was growing up. And he told the type of jokes that I want to tell. And that's the type of level of comedian I want to be, the physical aspect of it. And I had the opportunity to meet Sinbad 3 years ago. And he told me, you know, the best thing you can do is get on any stage that you possibly can get on. If it's a open mic at a cafe, if it's an open mic in the back of a bar, or if it's an open mic at a comedy, get on that stage and just rock out. Because the more comfortable you get, the better you get. So that type of advice, it's stuck with me ever since he gave it to me, and I plan on living it through. I definitely plan on getting as many stages as I can. But Dead Crow, there's something special about that place. I can feel it. I felt it when I walked in. You know, I like the feel of it. I like the audience. I like the DJs so far that have been in there. The comics, there's some decent comics in there. But there's something special about Dead Crow, and I think I'm going to do some big things there. I'm excited about that. Same thing with this studio that I'm in now. There's a good energy. I really, really like it. I still got to get comfortable. This is all new, having a camera in my face. You guys looking at me looking at you, you looking at me. I mean, it could get weird if we don't do it right, but I'm having fun. So, yeah, so that pretty much wraps up this episode. I'm going to get into the, once I release these episodes, I want to release 1 or 2 episodes a week. Still trying to figure out what that cadence is going to look like, but it's a good show, and glad you guys joined. I look forward to seeing you again next week. Peace.